please stop reading these kinds of books and start reading these instead. If you've been trying to read in Spanish, or just any language really, and it feels painful or confusing, you're not alone. The truth is, most people start reading way too early, and it actually ends up making things a lot harder. In this video, I'll show you when to start reading, what to avoid, and how I went from struggling through basic texts to enjoying full-on novels and even video games, all in Spanish. First things first, probably the most important point, don't read too early. Reading before you've listened enough can actually mess with your pronunciation. When you read, you're sounding out these words using your inner voice in whatever your target language is, in Spanish in my case. And if you haven't heard like hundreds of hours of correct pronunciation, you'll subconsciously read them in your native accent. A good rule of thumb, I think, is to kind of wait until you've at least had 600 to 800 hours of comprehensible input through listening, videos, whatever, conversations, before starting to read. Around this level is when you can start to read in a more extensive way, which is basically the way that you would read in your own native language. This means you don't translate every word and overanalyze every sentence. You just enjoy the book for the story that it's trying to tell you. And then you just let repetition and exposure do the work, basically, naturally. Suddenly, reading clicks. You're not decoding, you're living in the language, or in my case, you're living in Spanish. Before we go into my journey with reading in my target language in Spanish, I have a little bit of a bone to pick with graded readers and textbooks in general, so I wanted to touch on that. Graded readers are often recommended in popular sort of language learning communities, but most of them, the reality is they suck. And this isn't their fault, like they're designed around strict word limits, so it's just a result of these restrictions. The stories end up bland and robotic, like you can't make interesting stories with limited vocabulary, basically. You might end up reading the same structure, same sort of sentence like 20 times in the entire book, but you're never going to feel compelled to turn the page. Like, okay, yeah, you're getting repetition of the same structures and stuff, but it's not like, oh, this is such a invigorating story. You never get that sensation to keep reading, or I never did. And beginner Spanish textbooks, even worse. They're packed with like English explanations, fake dialogues, and grammar drills that make you think about Spanish instead of thinking in Spanish. You might feel productive, but you're really just building bad habits, like poor pronunciation and over-analysing everything in your target language. So skip them. Your time is way better spent listening until you're ready for real, enjoyable stories in your target language. Okay, in this section I wanted to talk about how my reading journey has evolved, basically. So, welcome to my ugly Spanish books word count spreadsheet. Yeah, this is where I track like the books that I've read and what I'm reading and stuff, so I can track how many words I've read and see how my level's progressing, basically. So yeah, the first books I started to try and read in Spanish were the short stories in Spanish for beginners, graded readers by Ollie Richards. And yeah, I actually completed the first one, somehow. I think with the graded readers, when I first picked my first one up, it was more the sensation of, oh wow, I can actually read this and like follow the stories. Yeah, it was kind of like the shiny new toy in my like language learning experience at the time. So I will give graded readers that actually kind of gives you a bit of a sense of accomplishment after having listened and watched, like had comprehensible input for a while. You start realizing, oh my god, I can actually read in this language. It's a good like dip toe in, oh, okay, it's possible to read in Spanish now, basically. But yeah, when I tried to read the second one, I basically got halfway through and I was like, I can't do this. these stories about, I can't even remember, like they were so forgettable, the stories. It was just like, I just wasn't enjoying it, and it was taking a long time for me to get through these. They're only like 30,000 word books, but my god, it took me so long to get through it. So I just decided to leave it at halfway and record the halfway mark. I've also got a column here that kind of shows at what level how much comprehensible input that I'd absorbed in Spanish, like approximately around the time I'd read these books. So as you can see, when I started, I really hadn't had that much listening time. So I decided to put a pin in reading for a while after I attempted the second volume of the graded readers, the short stories, and I was like, okay, I'm not ready to read now, so let's just leave it for a while. So yeah, when I actually came back to reading, by this point I'd had 1,000 hours of comprehensible input. So I was, yeah, decided I wasn't going to make the same mistake and try and read graded readers, because I knew I would lose interest really fast. So yeah, I started off with a bit of a classic. I guess it's not really a well-known book, I don't think, in Scotland at least, like compared to Roald Dahl books. The Little Prince, or El Principito in Spanish. It was the first actual kids book that I managed to enjoy and finish. And yeah, after I read this book, I was like, oh wow, like this is actually enjoyable. I know it's for kids, but like, you know, it has a little bit of magic. It has that, you know, there's just something nostalgic and magical about reading like kids book as an adult. Like I've not done it in English, but like going back and reading these kinds of book as an adult in Spanish, it's for me, I find it super entertaining. It's it's a really nice experience. So yeah, I decided to follow that thread and moved on to a physical book that was actually gifted to me. It's called El Caballero de la Armadura Oxidada. Yeah, and it was around this time that I think I actually seen a video from someone in the Dreaming Spanish community on YouTube, JC, about like reading webcomics as a way to make reading more enjoyable. And that kind of sparked a curiosity in me to start reading like manga, basically. I'd never read manga in English, or I maybe had read a few volumes of some anime that had stopped and they only had some or to kind of skip ahead of the anime, I think for like maybe Attack on Titan or something, just because I was so obsessed with what happened next. But in general, I'm not like a big manga reader or comic book reader. But yeah, I was like, you know what, like that's the idea of having like the visual input or the visual context as well as being able to read. That's maybe a good way to kind of like smooth off this period of reading, because even though I enjoyed The Little Prince and the knight with the like rusting armor, there was a lot of like symbolism and imagery that was a little bit difficult to follow, even at 1,000 hours. So I was like, okay, let's go into like in manga, it's all conversational. There's a few like, you know, narration lines and stuff like that, but it's mostly very basic and you have the visual context. So I was like, okay. After that video that I'd seen from JC, I was about webcomics, it was inspired. I was like, that sounds like a great idea. So yeah, I started off with Hunter x Hunter, which is one of my favorite anime series of all time. I actually just finished like watching it dubbed in Spanish, the whole anime on Netflix. And I was like, oh, I want to start reading like ahead of, because there's manga volumes and chapters out ahead of what the new anime and stuff has been released. So yeah, I read the first volume and it was so heavy. It was like, yeah, it was there was so much vocabulary. It was honestly too difficult even for manga. I was like, what? It was just too complicated. So then I actually moved into Jujutsu Kaisen, which is a super popular anime just now as well. I rewatched that in Spanish, again, similar story. And I wanted to, the manga was finished and I wanted to read ahead and basically see what happens, but in Spanish. So yeah, I basically ended up reading volumes 16 through 30, all in Spanish, which ended up being 110,000 words. This is around 1,100 hours of comprehensible input. And I had an absolute blast, like so much fun, amazing first experience, like reading basically manga on a Kindle as well. I don't actually have any chapters of the Jujutsu Kaisen anymore, but just as an example. That's another thing about manga, is that it doesn't go left to right, it goes right to left. It just looks amazing, like stunning. And yeah, it really grabbed my attention and basically helped me practice Spanish. Like this form, this medium, this is honestly, in my opinion, is a great way to sort of like ease into reading Spanish, is through comics or through manga, like on a Kindle, on your computer, whatever you can use. Yeah, I kind of followed this like manga vein for a while. I ended up reading Jujutsu Kaisen, finishing the whole manga series, so like great, enjoyed it. Uzumaki, I read like it was like a horror series, 21,000 words, one of the classics apparently, so I decided to read that. It was super freaky, but great. Then I started reading Tokyo Ghoul, which I heard is like one of the best manga of all time or whatever. And I got one. I think I'd watched the anime ages ago in subtitles English, and even that I didn't really like it that much. So I was like, okay, I'll give the manga a chance. I read like a third, and I was like, nah, not for me. So I got tired and stopped. And then I was like, I decided to dip my toe back in the waters of kids books, but kids books that I'd read when I was a kid in English, so I had the context there to start reading in Spanish. Maybe it would help me. So I actually moved into reading The Hobbit, which was a a recommendation from like one of my tutors I had in Colombia, or my conversation partner in Colombia, who said it's a great book to read, a lot of rich vocabulary, all the rest of it. And oh my god, I found it so tough at like 1,100 words, even with the fact that I read it when I was a kid. I know the story in general. With the fantasy jargon, I'd literally read like a couple of chapters and I was like, no, not just now. I really like Lord of the Rings. I love The Hobbit. I love this Tolkien's style of writing and stuff like that. But oh my god, for me it was difficult in Spanish at 1,100 hours. So I stopped that and I decided to go back to properly into nostalgia zone. I'd actually just recently read the whole Harry Potter series, like again in English, maybe before I started my Spanish journey. So yeah, very fresh in the mind. So I decided to read the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Harry Potter y la piedra filosofal. You don't really hear that word very often. And yeah, like when I read that book, it was super, super easy. Like for me, with all the context I have, with all the cultural significance that this book has had in my childhood, I just flew through it. And yeah, it was the first time I'd read a kid's book. Obviously, I read El Principito y El Caballero de la Amargura Oxidada, but it was the first time I'd really read a kid's book without any images, that just was like flowing, and I was totally in the zone, like I'd be when reading English. So this was at around 1,150 hours, and this was the book that really was like, okay, you can read Spanish now, and you can actually enjoy like a really fun story, basically. Then I jumped back into manga. I don't know what my thinking was. I think I was still kind of enjoying manga as well, or enjoying anime and manga at this time. So I never actually watched Dragon Ball. I watched Dragon Ball Z. When it was like probably the first anime I was really like it got me when I was a kid. Like Super Saiyan Goku, all this stuff. It was a huge fad when I was a kid at school. All the games, all the anime was a bit difficult to get your hands on, but at least the games. And I ended up watching like the abridged series and all this stuff in English. So I decided, you know what? Like I've never actually read the Dragon Ball initial manga, or I think the manga is just called Dragon Ball, but the stuff before Dragon Ball Z, it's like one of the classics basically. So I read that, loved it. Was actually what I was showing you, was Dragon like the Dragon Ball Z section of Dragon Ball. And I just flew through that. It was super fun, in Spanish, like absolutely loved it. And then after I finished those volumes, like of the Dragon Ball section of Dragon Ball, I moved on to, I decided, let's use the nostalgia factor more. You know, I'd used it with Dragon Ball, I'd used it with Harry Potter, and it worked really well. So some of my favourite books growing up as a kid were the books from Roald Dahl. So I read, first of all, like the ones that are really, really short and the most easy to understand, I think, which is Fantastic Mr. Fox, or Super Zorro, as it is in Spanish. I love the translation, Super Fox. And yeah, this was at around 1,400 hours, I think, yeah. And yeah, flew through that, went into the Twits, or in Spanish, Los Cretinos, by Roald Dahl. Flew through that as a 10,000 word book, super easy to get through. And yeah, after I read these books, it was actually, I did another change. It's like to spice up my Spanish reading life again. And yeah, I bought like an emulation device like this. It's like basically an emulation device for the Game Boy Advance SP, which was one of my favourite handheld consoles growing up as a kid. Again, tapping into the nostalgia factor. Yeah, as you can see, like I'm actually playing through it, doing a playthrough of Pokemon Fire Red just now, which is I never actually played this when I was a kid. I wasn't really a big Pokemon kid, but it's like repetitive, super simple vocabulary and stuff, and it's fun. So just for reference. But yeah, so with my tiptoeing into gaming, I actually started with a few like JRPGs, like which are basically role-playing games, super, like text-based, like walking around, speaking to people, making decisions, having fights, whatever. And I kind of realised that I'm not a fan of this kind of game, but at least I gave it a go. Like the Final Fantasy VI is meant to be one of the best like JRPGs of all time, same as Chrono Trigger. And yeah, like the stories and stuff, they kind of got me at the start, but like I just slowly lost interest. I don't know if it's my TikTok brain or what. Like I don't even have TikTok, but like it just didn't get its nails into me like some of the other things that I'd experienced. So I started them both and lost interest, like I said there, but I must have easily gotten around 40,000 words just from playing those games. Because if you finish them, they're like basically 2 novels in one game. But then yeah, one game I did really enjoy, which is super text heavy and really good, it has a lot of interaction, is Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. It's basically a game for the DS that came out years ago, but you can actually play it on something like this as well, no problem. You're basically like an attorney that is like defending a client for some accusation. So in this game, you're obviously doing the investigation, and you're coming to the courtroom with all this like evidence on hand, and you're having to actually interact, which is different from all the reading experience I had before. I had to give input, I had to interact for it to like continue, which was kind of like a little bit of a test. Like, am I actually following? Do I understand this? So honestly, like one of my favorite like reading experiences in Spanish has been Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. Highly recommend. Super lovable characters, enjoyable story, funny as well. And it's just like a little test to make sure that you're following, and when you do get like they're not super difficult cases, but like when you get the cases right and you catch the accusation, the other attorney out and say, no, this isn't right, this is because of this evidence, it's like, yes. So super satisfying. My favorite game I've played so far in terms of like picking up Spanish. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, highly recommend. Then I decided to dip my toe back into another book that I read as a kid and loved, which is The Witches, or Las Brujas in Spanish. I kind of loved the film more than the books, to be honest, but like I remember the imagery from the film like basically scarring me as a child. I don't know if you guys remember the images of like the witches like melting or just their faces, and oh, horrible. But anyway, read through that book, absolutely loved it, flew through it. Again, using the nostalgia factor. But yeah, after I'd flown through that last like Roald Dahl book, I kind of realized, okay, now I'm starting to get a little bit bored of like the kids fiction. Like, I wanted something a little bit juicier with a little bit more meat on the bones, because I was now at this, by the time I'd finished the Witches, I'd had 1,500 hours of comprehensible input. I technically finished the Dreaming Spanish roadmap. Like, I should be able to kind of read more difficult, novels, texts. So I decided to start off my journey with The Hunger Games. Now, these are books I'd never read when I was a kid. I'd watched the first film, and maybe I remember watching the second one in the cinemas, and I didn't watch the third one. I think the only reason I watched those films is because I fancied, like, what was her name? Jennifer Lawrence, because I had a crush on Jennifer Lawrence. That was the only reason I watched those films. I never really followed the plot that well. But yeah, I started reading the first one like last month, and it got me good. Like, it's a great book, and this was when I realized that, wow, like I can actually follow like books with more deeper plots, more to them. So now that post 1,500 hours of comprehensible input, like you're able to pick up like and understand a lot of heavier fiction. Basically, I know it's not like the most complicated fiction ever. Like, we're talking like teen level, I guess you would say in English, like teen level fiction. Yeah, at this level, like post 1,500 hours, like these kind of books are super accessible, at least from my experience, and with obviously the previous sort of reading that I'd done to kind of prepare me for a bit more difficult text, I guess. That's where I'm at just now, like in my reading journey. That's my history and where I'm at just now. And yeah, I plan on sort of continuing with more sort of teen fiction. Like, I never read Percy Jackson, the Percy Jackson series, like Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I'm kind of wanting to test myself without having the context of watching movies or having read the books previously. I really want to, like, that next test is now, okay, Percy Jackson, no context, go in head first, see how I get on. So where that leaves me at just now is that I'm at about 760,000 words read in total to date in Spanish. Yeah, so moving on from that section and talking about, why I've got this, like, tracker in the first place, and why I've got like my word count basically at the bottom all the time. Yeah, I think it was from the Dreaming Spanish blog that the SEG English School in Tokyo estimates that 1 million words gives you noticeable improvement, like in a language, and then 3 million lets you read almost anything. So it's kind of like having a good level once you've read 1 million words, and then 3 million words is like, okay, you're at a sort of a very good or excellent level. Like, you can pretty much read anything once you've read 3 million words in like native level books, basically. And then yeah, when you sort of like break that down, like for example, the Hunger Games books, they're like just over 100,000 words. So you're talking like, if you're reading those kind of books, or you're at a stage where you can read those kinds of books, it's like 11 Hunger Games size books to get to like a good level. and like 33, I guess, to be like an expert, which sounds like a lot, but it's totally doable over a few years. I think it's totally doable. And yeah, as I said, like I track my word count, just like my comprehensible input hours that I get through listening and videos and speaking. And I feel like it's been a massive motivator, especially like when you have the goal of the 1 million and 3 million words, you have something to be working towards every day. It gives you that extra push to make you want to read. Also, you want to, dive into these stories and escape into different worlds and stuff like that, just like through lots of media. But also having that light at the end of the tunnel, that level to be reached, that next level, just like in Dreaming Spanish with their level system with the hours. Like, I highly recommend it if you're wanting to like seriously get into reading and helping your literacy in a new language, basically, is to keep a tracker. I'll leave in the description of this video, Dreaming Spanish have like a template for my tracker was made by my own crappy spreadsheet skills, so I'm not going to share that one. I'll share a better quality one that you guys can grab and copy to your own Google Drive and use it in future, basically. And it's courtesy of Dreaming Spanish, so you can thank them, not me. Before closing out the video, I just wanted to touch on a little bit of a trend that I've been seeing in the community of Dreaming Spanish and just in general, like using AI tools when it comes to reading in Spanish and helping you to get better at reading. I think it's cool tech in general, like the idea that you can kind of, talk about topics that you're interested in and ask the AI to generate it at your level, and if it's too difficult, bring it down a level, all that stuff, okay? I understand the utility and that it's quite a cool tool, but I still prefer real books, like 100%. Books are crafted, edited, and full of life. Like a lot of these books are like literally like years of an author's life, like compacted into one book. In terms of the quality per page, like you can't get that in an AI generated story or something, like, at least in my opinion. With books, there's emotion, style, rhythm. Like AI just doesn't have that yet. It doesn't have that spice of like even kids' books. Like they've been edited. They've been through the cycles of like perfection, basically. I know not all books are perfect, but at least they've had these like cycles of like editing, like getting through all these like barriers to get them published. The quality you get from books is always going to be better than anything that's generated by an AI tool, in my opinion. So I recommend, like, maybe even if you're not a big reader in your own language, this is a good opportunity just to experiment with genres that you might like, and try and find something that kind of clicks with you. And then suddenly you'll start realizing that reading stops feeling like studying. It starts feeling like a leisure activity. It's like something that you truly enjoy. For me here, that really is that is the word, is enjoyment, like leisure. Like once you're at this level, you're reading and it doesn't feel like you're working hard. It feels like you're reading in your native language. The level I'm at just now is when I'm reading in Spanish. I literally sometimes forget that I'm reading in Spanish. It feels like I'm reading in English. So if you're not ready to read yet, keep listening for now. Your time will come. And when it does, make sure to track your words, make it fun, and most importantly, just enjoy the process. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching. And let me know in the comments what you're reading just now in your target language. And if you want to see exactly how I built my foundation through listening and basically comprehensible input first, check out my video on the Dreaming Spanish method next. Ciao, chicos.